Hey guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about Ana. I just wanted to kind of explain. She went from being a first pick, first ban material right before CCL to being picked a lot lower and banned a lot lower in CCL than she used to. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I wanted to go through some of those reasons, explain whether or not I still feel that she's good in the competitive environment, whether or not I feel she's still good in Storm League. She's still being picked a decent amount, being in about a third of the games and banned about a fifth of the games, which is a really great popularity. Or sorry, she's in a little less than a fifth, and she's banned a little bit around the fifth. She's banned or picked in a little more than a third. But I just wanted to talk about Ana a little bit. Why are we seeing a lot less Ana than we used to, and what are the ways we can adapt around that? So first, I want to talk a little bit about from the end of HGC moving forward. So Ana got a rework after HGC sometime in early 2019. This rework made it to where she no longer needed to stack her quest in order to get the longer range darts, the piercing darts, all of the heals like that. When they did that, it made it a little bit easier to get those heals early on. So they ended up nerfing her Q healing a decent amount that patch. Then they also nerfed her Q healing a little bit later. And they also nerfed a lot of those talents because Ana became pretty strong. Things like Night Terrors, her E talents got nerfed. Things like her W talents got nerfed. And then we also saw her extra healing getting nerfed as well. And each of these, they pretty much just said in the comments, well, we've noticed that Ana is still one of the priority healers, and this is the reason that we're affecting this. They buffed some of her underutilized talents like Vampiric Rounds, but then they still nerfed some of her other talents like Night Terrors. And then they have again fixed some bugs, and then right here they nerfed her W talents, or her W flat, even more so. And this is at the point where she was already not being played as often by a lot of the competitive scene, yet she was still a priority pick. So I want to talk about what happened right before this, and then I want to talk about what happened right after this that pretty much stopped this. So right before this, the competitive environment started dealing with a meta of solo lane bruisers diving backline. You would see Sonias, you would see Urels, you would see Dahakas, you would see Imperiuses. They would go into the backline, they would zone out about 3 members while their team would kill the front line. And Ana was extra susceptible to this because she didn't have a lot of self protection, self defense. Best she had was a root. She misses her root, or her sleep, anyways, her sleep dart. If she misses her sleep, she has nothing left. She has very little self healing, and she has only a slow if you talent into it, or if you land your sleep. And if you miss your sleep and you miss your slow, you're out. And they're very easy to miss. So those are the things that makes her really difficult. And outside of that, she's just in a rough spot. So people like Urel, who could jump in, be in a kind of moving back and forth that's really hard to land your abilities on, made it to where it was impossible for her to heal. So I'm not going to say Liam created this playstyle. It was definitely around before Liam was really getting into that. But Liam started playing this more aggressive playstyle. A lot of solo lane mains learned from this playstyle, adapted it to other heroes like the Haka, and this started being used quite a bit to zone out backlines. Well, that made it to where Ana had a hard time healing just about anyone during team fights. All she would really get is a quick nano boost, back off, maybe sneak up to get a couple heals, and then she was done. And so we saw that playstyle, and the only thing that we would see kind of adapt that is when they were picked on the same team. Ana was picked by Heavy on the same team as Liam, who was diving the backline, disrupting them, and then Heavy was keeping everyone up and didn't need to worry about that diver because Urel was being such a distraction. So that was the initial reason why Ana started to fall down. She was still a priority pick in Storm League because Storm League is a little slow to adapt to a lot of this. Even though her win rate was consistently below 50% even before this nerf, she was still a priority pick. Now, after this nerf was when everything started really shifting. This nerf kind of pushed her a little bit below where people were playing her a lot in Storm League. But on top of that, CCL doesn't play Ana that much, and they've been playing Ana less and less and less. Now, at first you might say, oh, well, it's because of the medallion, but ultimately she actually got a little bit more benefited from the medallion than she got hindered. Sure, she could throw out a sleep dart and they could medallion before the sleep dart, or they can medallion right after the sleep dart to remove the extra slow. But ultimately, those didn't make that much of a difference to her as far as her playstyle or her place in the meta. The removal of the medallion will probably make her a little bit more vulnerable to someone like a Diablo, who can sneak into the backline, pop an APOC combo, and she has no way out of it. Or even something as simple as like it's a Haka that charges in the backline, dodges the spear, and then just grabs her or isolates her. There's a lot of people who can abuse an Ana without a medallion. You could even go back to the old playstyle I used to recommend to teams that were annoyed at dealing with Ana, where they would run like Tyrael with Judgment and Ragnaros with Sulfurous Smash. Well, they'll just Judgment in Sulfurous Smash and Ana dies every single fight. There's a lot of things where if you have medallion, you just medallion the Judgment or and you're okay. You don't get hit by the Sulfurous Smash. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But that isn't just it. One of the primary reasons why Ana's really struggled in CCL, having a lower win rate than even her Storm League win rates. And let's talk about her win rates just a tad. In Storm League, she has a 48% win rate and a 36% popularity, meaning that she's banned or picked in about a little more than a third of the games being played. It's a relatively low popularity compared to where she used to be at, which was about a 70 to 80%. And again, people might say, well, in Storm League, you've got uncoordinated groups. It's hard to land your heals on people. You might not pick the best nano targets in draft and all that. So that's the reason that her win rate's low. But if we go to CCL stats, her win rate's 46%. Her pick rate, or her popularity anyways, is at 41%. So she's banned a little bit more. She's picked a little bit more than some other heroes. But still nowhere near where she used to be as far as her popularity and her win rate went. We see Stukov absolutely trumping her stats. Higher play rate, higher win rate, higher ban rate. That's purely where we're at as far as Stukov goes. Maybe not higher ban rate, but that's the thing is Stukov's just outperforming her in every way, and Stukov didn't used to outperform her. So what made the change where Ana went from being pretty much top 3 pick in heals to being not even in the top 5 anymore when it comes to heals in CCL? And I would say it breaks down to 2 major factors. The number 1 factor is, have you ever tried healing with Ana on a region ping other than your own? What I mean by that is, if you're North America, go to Europe and try to play Ana. It's really, really tough. You miss a lot of your heals. Your sleep darts and grenades come out a little too late. Your nano boosts are perfectly fine, but everything else just feels a little too clunky. Even with practice, it's hard to adapt because your team's constantly adapting to what the enemies are doing. And normally you need to quickly adapt to them, but it's hard to predict because your team's going to adapt to the enemy's movements and they might change up their thing. So if you're on a delay, it's going to be really difficult to heal. That's the number 1 reason many of the healers that these CCL teams picked are Korean and European players, which means that how good they were with Ana in their region is no longer what they can do with Ana in this region. Now they're essentially just an anti-heal bot as well as a nano boost bot that just doesn't keep up with the healing. Anas in general have been doing about half as much healing as the other healers so far in CCL. It's crazy, honestly. I mean, even in the cases that they're going against healers with similar healing numbers, they're just not bringing as much utility as those opposing healers are bringing to the table, which is definitely the number 1 reason why we've been seeing a lot less Ana in CCL. But the number 2 reason is the meta. Not only do we have that solo lane bruiser that's jumping into the backline and just being a pain, but we also have this new meta where the majority of teams are actually drafting 2 to 3 bruisers and sometimes 2 tanks and a bruiser, or 1 tank and 2 bruisers, and they're just walking in wherever they want to in these fights. They have so much health that they don't need to worry about getting peeled off because there's 3 of them that you need to focus down at the same time, and you can't do that. So in order to compensate for that, both teams are running a bunch of bruisers, and they're running healers that have a little bit more of that self-defense, a little bit more self-healing, mobility, or peeling potential. Someone like a Stukov who could just push someone away really far, heal himself, give himself 75 armor, and continue forward. Someone like Brightwing who could just jump around the fight, or Lucio who can just move around the fight quickly. Those healers are gaining a lot more priority these days rather than the healers that struggle to heal themselves. And that's another reason why Ana has been kind of falling short. Not just that, but the more bruisers you have, the higher health pools. Oftentimes what Nano Boost does is it gives you enough damage fast enough to kill a couple members, and then Nano Boost is over and you lose a lot of your burst from those fights. Well, big health bars, those bruisers, those tanks, they don't often die to that burst damage anymore. They'll survive the burst damage, and once that nano boost is gone, there goes a huge potential of their team. So if the burst isn't valuable, the anti-healing's too short of a duration, the meta is forcing everyone to spread out more and have more self-defense. This is the reason why Ana isn't being played anymore. Not only is it that Korean and European ping, but it's also just the fact that the meta is shifted to be less bursty fights and more long drawn out fights where grenade and nano boost have a lot less value. And those are the reasons that we're seeing a lot less Ana and lower win rates of Ana in CCL. And because we're seeing less of that in CCL, that means we're also going to be seeing less of that in Storm League over time, because a lot of the higher level Storm League is influenced by what we see in CCL, and a lot of the mid to lower level Storm League is influenced by the people that they lose to and the people that they win with, which are often those that are a little bit higher ranked than them. So it slowly trickles down, which is why oftentimes we'll see major things happen in the competitive scene and it slowly trickles down. I used to make a joke that said that you would see changes in CCL from patches up before the patch even happens, because they would read the patch notes. They would start scrimming with the new changes on the PTR. Then the highest level divisions, Division 1 and Division A, in this case Heroic Division or Storm League, would catch on usually during that patch. And then you would see like the Diamond, Plat players usually pick it up in about a week. The Gold and Silver players maybe pick it up in like a month. And the Bronze players are still back in like 2016. And that's kind of the running joke that like we in like the analyst community and the coaching community had when HGC was a thing, just because everyone would always pick it up at their own pace, which is kind of fun. So that's kind of what we're seeing now is CCL hasn't been playing a lot of it. The competitive scene hasn't been playing a lot of it, and it's slowly trickling down to the point that we're seeing less of it. So just because we're seeing less Ana, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that we can't play Ana in Storm League anymore? No. Because we're not actually seeing a lot of the same metas in CCL that we're seeing in Storm League. And also, you're playing on your own ping, so you can still play a good Ana these days. I would just recommend drafting her with a great nano boost target, something like a Malthael, a Jaina, an Orphea, a Chromie, a Mephisto. Mephisto's really good with nano boost. Just something like that. Draft her with a good nano boost target. Or what I haven't been seeing a lot of, and something that I saw in the past right as they reworked Ana and Eye of Horus got its buff, was one diver and one Eye of Horus. Eye of Horus heals and deals damage at the same time. So if you have a diver that goes in on the back line, even one of those healers with a little bit more self-defense can get dropped very quickly by a diver that can stay in the fight because they're getting healing and that added extra damage from an Eye of Horus. So I think that Eye of Horus is being underutilized right now, and I feel like Nano Boost is being picked too much when you don't have a good nano target. Some mages aren't even that good of nano targets because their cooldowns don't really line up very well with Nano Boost. So that's really some of the things that I wanted to share. Is these are the reasons that we're seeing a lot less Ana. Nothing major happened to her. Sure, she did receive a lot of nerfs along the way, but overall, the big things that we saw with Ana was a shift in the meta and kind of a third factor of ping that came into account. But she's still a very good hero, a very good healer that has a lot of potential in Storm League and still a little bit of potential in the competitive environment, albeit it's probably going to be used a little differently than we have seen her in the past. Nano boosting things more like Malthael IL just because everyone's running bruisers, or potentially using more Eye of Horror so you can stay so far away from the fight that that maybe Urel's wasting her time by chasing you this far because you can still heal. Urel chases you all the way to your towers, and then she has to back off, and now you're still healing your team, but she's not a part of the team fight. So there's a lot of potential still in there that I think Ana has. I don't necessarily think that she needs to get buffed right now, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing her get maybe some heal buffs and some nerfs to things like her utility. Because that's the one thing that I feel like is kind of lacking with Ana right now, is just that extra healing, where she's still being drafted so much for that anti-heal and that nano boost, that maybe nerf those a little bit and then buff up the just baseline healing so you can have a little bit more impact if you're good at landing those heals. But what do I know? I'm not a game designer. I just wanted to explain, do a little bit of a different video, and talk a little bit about what happened to Ana, why she went from being the #1 picked and banned healer right before CCL to being a healer that is, I mean, lowering down into beneath the top 5 even in many cases. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I just kind of wanted to do a different one. Otherwise, make sure to check out all of my other videos. I've got a bunch of them on the competitive scene, as well as a bunch for new and intermediate players as well. So feel free to check out all of those. Thank you guys so much.